Patreon page. Here we will provide you with the sports betting tips, picks, and information in order for you to become a successful gambler. We have 5 packages that I think really do an incredible job of providing the information tailored to you, what you want, and what your sports betting needs are. For more information, reach out to the TWSN team, but we have a ton of stuff coming your way. Content from fantasy football, sports betting for UFC, NBA, NHL, and of course, the NFL. We are so excited to be able to bring this service to you, and let us know if there's any more information you need.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Welcome back to the Off the Top Rope podcast here live on the TWSN YouTube channel. I'm your host, Justin Lacertosa, joined by my co-host, Matt Blaustein. Matt, it's been a pretty quiet week in professional wrestling. We had AEW Full Gear, which was a great pay-per-view. But outside of that, there hasn't been too much. But how are you feeling coming into tonight's show?
I'm doing great. I think the pay-per-view that happened on Saturday night was one of the best of the year. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into that right away. And I think that's up there with like Money in the Bank this year. But we'll get to that in a second. Before we do, though, everyone, please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you like football, basketball, MMA, etc. We have it all here. We have shows, daily shows every single day. We have a bunch of people pumping out different video breakdowns and things like that. So whatever sport you like, we have it. We have content for it coming out weekly and daily. And download the mobile app, the TWSN mobile app, to access all of our content from our team of 60-plus writers. Everyone's pumping out daily articles. So download the mobile app. And let's get right into it. So, Matt, AEW Full Gear, as we said, it's one of the best pay-per-views of the entire year. And there weren't really any, I mean, there was one debut, but outside of that, I mean, there wasn't really anything like Money in the Bank, for example. They had big returns. Some other pay-per-views had big debuts, like Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole. This one didn't really have that outside of one, which we'll get to. It was just a lot of good wrestling throughout the show. So let's start with the opener. MJF versus Darby Allen. MJF won this one. I really enjoyed the match. I thought it was exactly what they were going to put on. I thought it was an A-level match, and both these two of the most talented wrestlers on the planet. So, Matt, what were your takeaways from this match? How did you like it, and what do you want to say about it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things I want to say about this match. I think the intro to the match was brilliant. I think MJF coming down to the ring in a special robe and having Justin Roberts say that he could beat his opponent with a headlock takeover was something that was really, really interesting, and it really worked for his heel character. Headlock takeover is pretty much a very basic move. And it's been something that's kind of been said of MJF in the past. The fact that he's incredible on the mic, has a great character, but the question is, like, can he go in the ring? And I think last night proved it. I think it actually went viral on social media, not just wrestling social media, but social media as a whole. The technical mastery for about 2 minutes in this match where they squared up. They were trading pin attempts. It was just really technical, very interesting. You don't really see that from an MJF match. You see that from a Darby Allen match, but MJF, it was very unusual to see. But it proved that, like, he's a real guy who can go in the ring. And so the whole theory is that there are 4 pillars of the young talent of AEW. And that would be MJF, that'd be Darby Allen, that'd be Sammy Guevara, and that'd be Jungle Boy Jack Perry. You saw 2 of them in action tonight, or not tonight, but Saturday night. And truthfully, the future seems incredibly bright. I think the finish was beautiful. I think the fact that MJF distracted the referee with Darby's skateboard and then hit him with his diamond ring and then put on a headlock takeover and won with a headlock takeover, just like he said he would. I think it's perfect for setting up MJF as a credible contender, because it's been theorized for a while that the person who will end up taking the belt from Hangman, which we'll get to that later in the night, will be MJF, because they are really priming him to be a young star. So I just have to say, like, A+ match, like, really, really good match, really good back and forth. Also the second longest, if I check my stats here correctly, it was the 3rd longest match of the night, which you rarely see from an opening match. But 3rd longest match on the night with basically nothing on the line just shows that these 2 guys are going to be the faces of the company for a long time.
Yeah, this is a match that personally I thought this was the second best match on the card. We'll get to what I thought was the best match later. But you even mentioned it yourself, for an opening match, it's really tough for guys, no matter how much experience you have or what company you're in, whether it's WWE, Impact, AEW. It's hard for the opening match to set the bar, and this match did that. And you were talking about MJF's skills in the ring. I've never really been wowed by it, and MJF did great in the ring. I wasn't really wowed by his performance this past pay-per-view, but he definitely stepped it up a lot, and he, as a whole, he's been one of the best wrestlers in the world for a while, simply due to the fact that he's one of the most engaging characters in the entire business right now, outside of maybe like Roman Reigns. He's probably the most engaging character in my mind. And now he's backing it up in the ring. And I always knew MJF was going to become a top in-ring guy in the world because, I mean, if you do something for so long, you're going to get to that point. And although he's nowhere near that right now, there's definitely steps in the right direction. And Darby Allen, I think, was a perfect opponent to put against him. I think they're kind of two polar opposites in the ring to an extent, where their missteps in the ring kind of combat each other, if that makes sense. So I really think this was the perfect match to have, and I think this was one of, if not the best match on the card, especially for an opener. It was definitely a special match, and we're definitely going to be seeing more of MJF versus Darby Allen in the future because they're two of the pillars in AEW for the young guys. But that was the opening match. Let's get to the second match on the card. The Lucha Brothers versus FTR. The Lucha Brothers won this match, retaining their titles. So, Matt, I think this was basically like exactly what you wanted in a tag team match. This is something I was also pretty surprised by and pretty happy about. But, Matt, what do you think about this match?
Yeah, I think at this point, there's AEW is probably the best tag team wrestling company in the world right now. I don't really think that's up for debate. I think just based on the fact that you have two next level teams in the ring with each other, where I will say that FTR is one of my top 5, maybe even top 3 favorite tag teams of all time. Everything they do in the ring is so fluid. Their character work during matches, being technical, is amazing, and it contrasts the high flying of the Lucha Brothers. But the technicality really stays with both teams in this match, and I really like that it was incredibly aggressive as a whole. I like the fact that they put FTR in a double submission until the ref broke it up at a point in the match. It's kind of a nice callback to a different promotion, but WWE NXT, where DIY ended up tapping out both members of, they were called the Revival then, in a double submission. It was a nice callback, and I really like the fact that it's kind of an open-ended finish here, because the wrong man was pinned because they were wearing a mask to trick the ref. I really think that was a good move, because it gives potential for some future feud between the two groups. However, I think the way this feud started was brilliant, with the whole idea of two people who are very familiar to Andrade, two masked luchadors. And I think that this feud is not over, which I'm not necessarily upset with, because honestly, these two teams are killing it right now. My main thing is, like, when we're looking at the tag team division of AEW, what tag team will beat the Lucha Brothers, and like which team, I guess, in a way, are they going to position against them? Because I think it's way too early for them to end their reign now. But I think there are a few teams that are gradually getting a lot of heat in that company that should like get some high profile matches in the future.
No, yeah. As a whole, again, this is exactly what I wanted in a tag team match. And AEW definitely does have the best tag team division in the world. Although that's not really something to really brag about, considering no other company really has some massively deep or great tag team division. I mean, as a whole, AEW's tag team division is pretty great. And this match proved that. These are two of the best tag teams in the world going at it. They're probably going to go at it again sometime in the future. And the finish in this match, the overall match as a whole, the intensity, everything about this match was great. And I'm really happy the Lucha Brothers retained. I'm a huge fan of FTR. I've loved what they've done throughout their entire careers as professional wrestlers, but I don't think it was the time for the Lucha Brothers to drop this title. So I was happy with the finish. So that one is just a great tag team match that everyone loves to see. But the next match on the card, the finals for the number one contendership for the AEW Championship, Miro versus Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson wins this match. He's the new number one contender for the AEW title. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think it was the right decision, but they could have gone another route. But Matt, what do you think about this?
I think there's a few things about this. Number one, this is going to be a very, very bold claim on my part, but I do think that the best ex WWE hire for AEW has been Miro. I'm not going to include Chris Jericho here because Chris Jericho is kind of a founding guy for them. But I think as far as people who have been released and brought in, I think Miro is your best hire. I think Miro has completely shown the world exactly what they thought he would be. It gives me partially like hope that one day Cesaro will leave WWE and go to AEW because the run that they have given Miro just proves that people that WWE has overlooked are able to like succeed beyond even people's greatest expectations. I think his character right now is brilliant. God's greatest champion, now the Redeemer, now kind of trying to figure himself out because he lost the belt with some unholy aggression he has right now. He absolutely murdered Orange Cassidy. I think Bryan Danielson winning was the right choice here. And they're already starting to set up some stuff in the future. If you watched AEW on and not watched it, but they just announced either this morning or yesterday night that Bryan Danielson's going to be facing Evil Uno in a match on, I believe, Dynamite. And that kind of sets the stage for, it's going to end up being Bryan Danielson versus Hangman Page for the next championship match. Which, by the way, I'm going to come out and say it. Like, I don't think it's a bold thing to claim, but I think that Hangman Page should win that. I know that we have to talk about that match in the later part about Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega. But I think Bryan Danielson has been built up here to the point where you can't really make him lose yet, especially since he's such a well-established name. But this match was everything that you wanted. I'm trying to remember if you ever saw them face in WWE when Miro was Rusev and Danielson was obviously Daniel Bryan. I don't really remember if they did or not, but this match was a perfect example of a very technical fighter versus a bruiser and a heavyweight. And I think it was brilliant. I think the ending with Miro getting locked in a guillotine and Danielson winning that way, I think that was a brilliant way to end it. It makes Danielson look unstoppable. It makes Miro look ridiculously strong because he went through so much adversity and still lost. But I think that it was a great match.
Yeah, for a match that I would probably say was third or fourth best on the card, that's tremendous because in most other promotions, this would be the best match on the card. But as a whole for this match, I mean, two guys that, I mean, basically the whole wrestling community knows because they were both big-time guys in WWE. Miro not as much, but everyone knows who he is really. And they went at it in AEW. And again, Miro's character in AEW is just they're fulfilling him so much more than WWE did. They're giving him much more room as a character and as a superstar than WWE ever gave him. And he's proving them AEW right. And as a whole, it's tough with me for this match. I was going back and forth on who I wanted to win. I knew Danielson was going to, and he obviously did. And I'm not mad at that at all. I think that was probably the right choice. But at the same time, I feel like for Hangman Adam Page to go against someone like Miro right away after he wins the title, someone with that physicality, someone with that demeanor that Miro has been made out to have, I think for Hangman Adam Page to go over Miro in a feud, that would have been huge for him. But at the same time, it's also huge for him to go over a guy like Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, and I think just going back on it is I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Miro is going to be a world champion one day. It's probably going to be sooner rather than later. But I think like you can't make Hangman Page lose in his first match. And the person who can take that hit more in the face of Miro or Danielson is Danielson. And because Danielson will not be delegitimized by it. Danielson is a living legend, one of the greatest wrestlers to ever wrestle. So I have to say, like, personally, I kind of agree with the call there. I mean, like, I get that it would have been a great match, but I feel like that's a match that you see a little bit in the future, like 6 months maybe in Reign.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to happen eventually. I think either Miro or MJF is the logical and most likely pick to dethrone Hangman Adam Page. But as a whole, I mean, I think Danielson was the better pick slightly, and I wasn't going to be mad either way about who won. Just to see Miro get that opportunity, that would have been huge. But Danielson going in against Hangman Adam Page, that's going to be a huge win for Page. But moving on, we have Christian Cage in the Jurassic Express versus Super Click in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Matt, what did you think about this one?
So I thought a few things. Number one, breakout star of this match had to be Luchasaurus. I think that he's someone who's always been underrated from the get-go, especially since Jungle Boy has likely more promise than him because Jungle Boy is much younger. And Luchasaurus is, I believe, in his late 30s. But watching him do a shooting star press off of the entrance ramp onto the floor was one of the most insane things I've ever seen, especially since the fact that Luchasaurus is like a 6'6", 6'7" guy where you barely see guys his height even execute a front flip. Doing one of the most complicated aerial moves that you can do was incredible to see. I think it was the right call here because you can literally, like, I don't think they will, obviously, but you could legitimately have the Young Bucks and Adam Cole lose every single match they're in, and they would never be able to be delegitimized just because of the level they are. I think the future, there was a bit of a hesitancy at the end with the concerto from Jungle Boy, which looks like there might be some tension between Christian Cage and Jungle Boy. I think that'll be a great feud for Jungle Boy to get in, especially since for him to go over potentially Christian Cage in the future would be big for his character. I think AEW is very leaned in on creating new young stars, and I think that would be a star-making thing for him. So out of everyone in this match, I think Jungle Boy obviously has the most potential because he is the youngest and he is the one who has the clear championship future. Especially since he's so over with the crowd. But I think it was a great match. I think that since it was false count everywhere, it was obviously going to be a little bit more extreme. Adam Cole got busted open. People went through tables. There was a ladder somewhere in the match. I'm trying to remember where. But I think overall, just really good match.
No, yeah, as a whole, this was another match I really liked on the card. There weren't really any matches on this card that I didn't like at all. I think all of them, I wouldn't say all of them exceeded expectations, but all of them at least met expectations, which is huge. Christian Cage proves yet again that he has not lost a step since his injury. And as a whole, this match, a feud between Cage and Jungle Boy would be, I think, a smart move by AEW. That's a good place to put both of these guys in the future. And I think as a whole, just this match was great. And a Falls Count Anywhere stipulation, I think this was the perfect match to have it for. And it really just, honestly, this was one of my favorite matches as well. I know I've said that about like 3 matches, but I like this one as well. So this was a great match, and I'm excited to see what happens with Cage and Jungle Boy and what happens with the rest of this feud. But let's move on to the next match, another tag team match, Cody Rhodes and Pac versus Malachi Black and Andrade. Matt, what do you think about this one?
So I think a few things. I think that having these 4 in a match together, while it's obviously the stories are all intertwined because you've had heat with Andrade and Pac and Malachi and Cody, and there is kind of that old callback to Andrade and Malachi being friends outside of the ring, coming in AEW at about the same time. As much as that's there, I just feel like it's a little bit of a waste to throw them together like this. I mean, it might be a bit of a hot take here, but like you have 4 guys here where Cody Rhodes is someone who at this point is the stepping stone guy. He's reminding a little bit of the modern day Randy Orton or John Cena, where they're not really going to get a championship opportunity. They're there to elevate younger talent. But the thing is that like this talent does not need to be elevated. The other 3 of them are very legitimate contenders. Something for me, like this was a great match. Don't get me wrong. I also think the fact that Cody was booed in the match, the fact that they haven't made him turn heel yet is kind of baffling to me. Especially since like people are so done with his character, to the point where people are calling everything that happens with him the Codyverse, which is separate than the rest of AEW, which in itself is hilarious. I just don't know where this goes from here. I think that there was, I'm trying to remember, I believe there was a post-match attack. Do you remember hearing about that? I think there was a post-match attack by FTR on Cody and Pac.
I believe there was. I think there was.
So for me, that just kind of confuses me. I mean, it also calls back the whole thing of Andrade saying he has two friends, and that was FTR, and they, beat Pac's stablemates, the Lucha Brothers, for their AAA Tag Team Championships. For me, though, it just kind of feels like it was put together to give these guys something to do. I think Malachi actually over MJF should be the one to take down Hangman. I'm going to be fully honest here. The only other, like Malachi, if by 6 months from now, or even 3 months from now, he is not some sort of champion in AEW, and by that I mean singles champion, not tag team champion, there's going to be an issue. He was one of the best signings they could have made. I think every single person in this match has potential, but I think Malachi is your guy if you want a main eventer. So I think to have him kind of in a thrown together match like this was kind of a disservice to him.
I think, as you said, this match was just a match that they put together to have all these guys doing something. All these guys are too talented to not be on the card. So they just threw it together, and it was a good match. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I didn't really understand much of what was going on between this match. And as a whole, it was a good match again, but it's a bunch of guys just thrown together, I feel like. And Malachi Black, as for him being the next champion, I would definitely be down with that. I think it should be Miro or MJF, but he's up there as well. I think that's probably the clear top three guys that should be the next AEW World Champion. And Malachi Black, I think he should just have a singles run, make a run as a single star. I don't really expect this to happen, but I hope they don't pair him and Andrade full time together. I think that would be a disservice to both of them, frankly. So as a whole, it was a good match. I just think that this was a little underwhelming because of overall the story. So this is probably the one I didn't like the most.
I think for me too, it's something where you see like three of the guys in this match. I'm not including Cody because Cody's like the executive vice president of AEW as a whole. So he's not really there to like get wins. He's really there just to elevate others. But if you look at the other three, they've kind of had their wheels stuck in the mud since they've gotten to AEW, where Pac was one of the first signings. He had some visa issues, then he had an injury, then he's kind of been in the background. It would not surprise me if at some point Pac and Hangman was a match for one of the main events of a pay-per-view. I don't think that Pac's going to win. My worry is that Pac's in that place where he's never going to be that main champion, which is kind of unfortunate, but he's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. It just makes it really hard for him when the main event is already so saturated. So I'm not really sure what they're planning on doing with him. Malachi, as I said before, looks like a main event or bust, but also Andrade has kind of been a bust for me since he's come to AEW. I don't really remember many of his matches at this point, which is kind of disappointing. I've seen mainly pretty much all of them, and he hasn't really hit it out of the park. He's been great, don't get me wrong. I expected an instant kind of TNT title push, which I feel like is definitely in the cards, especially since there wasn't a TNT title match on this card. I would not be surprised to see Andrade versus Sammy Guevara at the next pay-per-view. I'm just a little bit disappointed because I've been waiting to see him do some crazy stuff, and he hasn't really done that.
Something that I would like to see in the very near future is CM Punk versus Andrade. I feel like that would be the perfect thing to do for both of them at this time. Andrade winning the TNT Championship is also something I'd love to see. So either one of those things, those are the two things I would like to see the most from him going forward. But speaking of CM Punk, the next match, CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston. This is something that I liked a lot. I think CM Punk, it's still taking him time to get used to getting back to wrestling after, 7 years off. Still taking time, but for someone who hasn't wrestled in that long, someone who hasn't had much experience in a very long time, he's been great since his return. I think this was probably his best match since the Darby Allen one. So, Matt, what did you think about this one?
I think to sum up this match, you just have to go with that 1 45-second clip from this match that was everywhere right after this match happened, and it was the part where CM Punk became John Cena. And CM Punk did the shoulder tackles. He did the side slam. He did not the 5-knuckle shuffle, but he did deliver a middle finger to Eddie Kingston. I think it's been what everyone has wanted since he got there to AEW is for CM Punk to turn heel. I don't think it's really that far-fetched to say that that's what majority have wanted. He's someone who is excellent as a face, but his prime has always been when he's a heel. His best feuds have always been when he's a heel. Plus the fact that like if he's a heel, he's instantly like the top heel in AEW. I think that this was the first part of it. Eddie Kingston has, from someone who came into the company as a heel, Eddie Kingston is probably the most beloved wrestler by the fans at this point. It was a straight brawl this entire match. Punk bleeding, Kingston bleeding, people getting exhausted, Punk needing 2 GTSs to take out Kingston, which just leaves Kingston incredibly strong. I think it was the right finish. Knowing that Eddie Kingston is probably going to take some time off right now for his shoulder surgery, which he's been wrestling with for a while, it was the perfect send-off for him. Punk, I definitely see a heel turn as imminent. So it's really just sooner rather than later, and just keeping an eye out for that.
As a whole, I love this match. As you said, it was just an overall brawl. There's not much really to add on to that. But in terms of just Punk in general, I mean, I know he's obviously going to turn heel at some point. I think everyone knows that. I don't think it's going to come very soon, though. I feel like we're going to see Punk for the next few months, like 6, 7, 8 months, just go on a huge winning streak. And we'll get to like 20-0, something like that, just to remind people, oh, this guy's strong. I feel like there's going to be a point where when he loses that first match, that's when he's going to turn heel. And I think CM Punk, ever since coming back, he hasn't looked like how he did in the past in his prime, but he still looks great. For a guy that hasn't wrestled in 7 years, he looks amazing. And against Eddie Kingston, he looked great as well. And I love to see CM Punk just keep going up and up and up the AEW card in terms of opponents. That's just helping him get back where he was before. And I can't wait to see what he does next against a guy like Andrade, as I said before. Maybe against Kenny Omega very soon. I would love to see that. So as a whole, I love this match, and I just can't wait to see what Punk does in the future. Next up, Brent Breaker versus Tay Conte. Matt, what were your thoughts on this one?
Okay, so Britt versus Conte. I think that Britt Baker is amazing. I don't think that she should lose that belt anytime soon. I think she is the most legitimate name in that division. My worry is just, if we're looking at the way that the division is broken up, their most established superstars are either heels or they're faces that are fighting with other well-established heels. So, for example, Hikaru Shida, who's one of the only legitimate faces, currently feuding with Serena Deeb. Thunder Rosa is here and there, but I don't think Thunder Rosa's time is yet. And I think Thunder Rosa is someone who, not for the entire time in AEW, I do see her winning at some point. I think for now, though, she's going to be the bridesmaid, not the bride, in that she's going to be some incredible title descensus for Britt Baker, but I don't think she's going to take it. I think Conte did a great job. Knowing that AEW, especially since Tony Khan just came out and said it on an earnings call he had with investors about how Conte was one of his most wanted hires that he wanted to hire after she was released from NXT, where she barely got a chance to show her stuff. And then just showing everything she could do, especially with some Brazilian jiu-jitsu that she's trained in, her hard strikes, but also hitting release German suplexes, doing moonsaults, hitting TKO. Like, she's looking great right now. She's growing, but like my concern just goes back to Baker and just who do they have that is a legitimate face in this division? And I'm going to go back to what I said last week, but I'm telling you right now, 30 days minus however long it's been since we did our last podcast, you're going to see Athena, formerly known as Ember Moon, make her debut, and I expect Athena to be the next women's champion in that division. I just feel like they need more legitimate faces because Ruby Soho, I love her. I think she's an amazing face. I don't think she's the person that you strap the belt to yet, but it's going to be coming in the next year and a half. But I think Athena's going to overstep her because she's someone who could also convincingly do a heel and a face.
No, I completely agree. And for a women's division that's so shallow in AEW, I think this match really showed promise, and I really enjoyed this match as well. And as you said, for a next challenger, Athena or Ember Moon, I think I was going to go back to that. I think that's definitely what they're leaning towards once she makes her debut in AEW. I hope she makes it sooner than later. Hopefully she doesn't wait for that 90-day clause, because what people forget is you don't have to wait through that whole thing. It's just if Ember Moon were to go to AEW right now, she wouldn't get paid. And obviously,
Exactly. The thing is, though, is that her contract was restructured because, remember, she went down to NXT. So that means that her new contract was given her was NXT. So that's a 30-day release clause. I think it's been pretty much confirmed by her. I think she's going to wait it out. Just knowing that the life of a wrestler is there's so many bumps. You take so much damage to your body. That amount of rest and rehab might be good for her to be paid for 30 days while she can just essentially heal up for whatever she's going to do next. But it's been pretty clear by Tony Khan that like she's going to be brought in.
Oh yeah, she's definitely going to be in this company very soon. And I think, as you said, she's going to be the one that dethrones Brent Breaker. So, I mean, I can't wait for her to debut. And as a whole, this was just a match that it showed a lot of promise for the women's division. Although it is shallow, it's going to get better throughout time. The next match, this is the one that I like this one a lot, but I don't think it was the greatest match. The Inner Circle versus Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, Junior Dos Santos, Andre Arvalski, and Dan Lambert in a Minneapolis street fight. So, Matt, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, this one's a little bit hard for me to judge. I think that when you have a match like this, where it's not a structured one in the way of a Survivor Series match, but if you have a big match like this where the stipulation is pretty open-ended, it was a Minneapolis street fight, but it never really felt like it was as cohesive as one of the Survivor Series matches or any other multi-man matches. I think whenever you have that, it makes it very hard to evaluate it, because there's going to be a lot of spots, but also it might be a little bit awkward at times because everyone's trying to get their stuff in. What I do have to say is my favorite part of this match was Baron von Raschke, who not a lot of people might know, but he was a old professional wrestler, originally from Nebraska, former NWA television champion, very well known in Minneapolis and Nebraska, in the area that the show is going. Got a big pop from the crowd while he did his signature claw on, I believe it was Ethan Page. So looking at this match over, I think that letting Guevara get some of his stuff in, hitting the gigantic senton through the table on Scorpio Sky was brilliant, just to get him his stuff in, because he is the one in this match who does have the most long-term potential. He's incredibly young. He's the current TNT champion. Also, I really like the fact that Chris Jericho ended this match, especially on the anniversary of Eddie Guerrero's death, hitting that 5-star frog splash through onto Dan Lambert, who's kind of been the spokesperson. I think it kind of made the finish a little bit worse, because as much as Dan Lambert's been their spokesperson, he's also an old guy who really shouldn't be in that ring. I really think it should have been either Junior Dos Santos or Ethan Page or Scorpio Sky, because they're not going to take as much damage as any of the newer guys. But I think it was a good match. I just think, in my opinion, it's probably the weakest one on the card. But like that kind of shows how good the card was.
Yeah, again, as I said, the third, fourth, fifth best match on this card would have probably been the number one match on a lot of other cards. And although this is probably the weakest one on the card, it was still a great, and I would probably say above average match. And I love what I saw from Sammy Guevara. And as a whole, I mean, again, this match, I didn't really like the cohesion throughout this match with so many guys. That's why I don't really like so many huge multi-man matches. But at the same time, for what it's worth, having so many guys in the ring, it was a great match, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, even though I think it was probably the weakest one for a few reasons. But after this, before the main event, did not come a match. It was Jay Lethal making his AEW debut, a wrestling legend, although he was never a WWE performer. Although he was never a WWE performer, a wrestling legend. So, Matt, what do you think about Jay Lethal's future in AEW? How do you think it's going to turn out, and how do you like the sign?
It's so tough. It's so tough for me to evaluate it, because if you remember, Jay Lethal was named once or twice in that speaking out movement that happened a few years ago, where it was known that he was kind of telling women in Ring of Honor that they had to sleep with him in order to get ascended to championship matches on the card. So it makes it so tough to be happy here, because he is a great wrestler, amazing on the mic, amazing in the ring. He's slowed down a little bit because he is a little bit older, but he is one of the best TNA wrestlers of all time. He's a standout on the independent scene. It just makes it tough because the whole emphasis about AEW and about Tony Khan and how he does business is that he doesn't really humor anyone who has that type of past. When Jimmy Havoc was in the division, he immediately got rid of him. Marty Scurll wasn't even allowed in. And just knowing that Jay Lethal's in there, it's either A, those claims are really not true, or B, like he's kind of just overlooking it. I think the fact that he's also doing a Ric Flair impersonation right after the whole Vice Plane Ride from Hell documentary is a little bit tasteless. I mean, I understand he can't really do the Black Machismo thing for Randy Savage because that's probably trademarked by WWE. But I think it feels a little bit tasteless, especially with the recency of that report. I am excited for the fact that he immediately challenged Sammy Guevara to a TNT title match on Dynamite, and the champ accepted it. So that's going to be a great match. The thing is, like, just at the back of my mind while watching him, it's kind of a, is it okay for me to see this? Like, is this okay because of his past?
No, yeah, if those past allegations are true, then it's definitely not something to be taken lightly. And as a whole, I mean, if they are true, I'm shocked that he was signed by Tony Khan to AEW. And I think let's assume they're not true for a second. If they're not true, Jay Lethal was a perfect signing for this company because he's someone that has a ton of experience around the world in wrestling, and he's a legend in the ring. And although he's not going to win an AEW title or anything like that, he's just going to be a guy that comes in as a mentor to a lot of the young crop of talent that AEW has right now. And he's a guy that's going to put on some great matches with some other performers. So if these allegations are not true that we heard about a while ago, I think it's one of the best signings they could have made. But it's all about those allegations, if they're true or not. Hopefully they're not, but at the same time, it's still worrisome. So we can't really give a full evaluation on that, I don't think. But let's move on to the final match on the card. The main event closed out the show. Kenny Omega defending his AEW championship against Hangman Adam Page. And finally, Hangman Adam Page wins an AEW World Championship. Matt, what were your thoughts on the match, and how do you really think this storyline, how do you think it culminated? How did you like how it culminated?
This is not just the best storyline in AEW history, but this might be one of the greatest storylines in all of wrestling history. I think the fact that this approaches Starrcade 97 levels of where you had Sting versus the entire NWO, where they completely botched the finish because Hulk Hogan said that it doesn't work for him to lose in the main event. So they botched the finish of what was probably at that point the greatest storyline in history ever. Do I think that this is the greatest storyline in wrestling history, like a lot of people are claiming? No. Just because I don't think it really approaches to some of the past significance of things like the Mega Powers imploding, Stone Cold versus Vince McMahon, etc. However, this is up there. It was the perfect finish to it. The fact that the entire match was back and forth. Page was keeping things clean, but Kenny Omega was not. You saw the Young Bucks kind of limp out there. And you see Kenny Omega got hit with the one-winged angel. And a big thing about this entire match was the question of, will Hangman Page be the first person in AEW and the second person ever to kick out of the one-winged angel? No, the second person who ever kicked out of the one-winged angel was Kenny Omega himself. And JR made an amazing call during it. And I think he said, no one hits it better than Kenny Omega after Kenny Omega kicked out. I think it was a brilliant call there. I think the finish was brilliant where Kenny Omega was hit with one buckshot. Kenny Omega is down. Hangman Page is on the apron. He has the Young Bucks there, and you see Matt Jackson just nod to Hangman Page just as a sign of approval. And Hangman Page hits another buckshot lariat and wins the title. And then you just see the Dark Order come out after them, offer him a beer. He swatted away, celebrate with his friends, get lifted on their shoulders, and that's when the show ended. I think that was the best way they could have ended it. I think it was a picture-perfect match. I'm assuming that this is going to get a 5-star rating from Dave Meltzer, if not even more. Best match on this card, easy. Best finish on this card, easy. Everyone knew this was going to be a great match. I think this surpassed a lot of people's expectations. This was 25 minutes and 35 seconds of pure perfection.
Well, I said earlier that the MJF versus Darby Allen match was my second favorite. I'll get to my favorite in a little bit. This match was definitely the show stealer, and for the main event, it was perfect. This was one of the matches of the year for sure, whether it's in AEW or WWE. This is one of the best matches of all of the entire year, and arguably the best match, you could argue. This storyline, obviously, you talked about one of the best storylines, not just this year, not just in the past decade of all time. And the reason why I like this match so much is because this is a story that's been building for the better part of a year. And this match was also the perfect blend between storytelling and professional wrestling. And when you get a perfect blend of those two and they mix together, you have one hell of a match on your hands. And that's exactly what happened in this match between Omega and Hangman Adam Page. The moment with Hangman Adam Page winning was just a surreal one. It's not a moment we see a lot because when guys win titles, no matter what promotion it's in, usually it's not this type of moment, this surreal. There's very, very few times when we see something like that. But with Hangman Adam Page, because of the way they've built the storyline, it's just something that everyone was excited to see. Although it was rather predictable that he would win, it's something that everyone wanted to see because it's just the perfect cherry on top to the storyline, and it really just rounded it out so well.
Yeah.
But
before you continue, I just thinking from an objective point here, and I know it's like kind of throwing something else in here, but if you're WWE and you're watching AEW put on 2 straight incredible pay-per-views that have a ton of buyers, with their stock rising incredibly much to the point where it literally came out a report that every single person in the AEW locker room, minus Brian Cage, because Brian Cage is apparently upset over not being booked to win every single championship in there. The fact that every single member of that locker room is incredibly happy with the company and where it's going and how they're acknowledging younger talent and letting older talent put over younger talent. If you're WWE, like, how do you follow that up? Because I know we spoke, I forgot if it was last week or the week before, but we spoke about the Survivor Series teams, how there's really no interest from anyone about it. How the fact that, like, I'm literally hosting this wrestling podcast here with you right now, and I didn't even know the team should speak wonders about the disinterest a lot of people have in WWE right now. How do they follow it up, especially with so many prime people looking to leave at WWE in the next few months, who could be swooped up by AEW? This AEW has now looked like the dream destination for a lot of people because they have partnerships with every single wrestling company not named WWE, whereas WWE stays to themselves. It's just a question of how do they follow it up.
I don't really think there's a way they follow it up. I mean, realistically, they're not going to, but I don't think there's a realistic way unless they book some perfect storyline and cater to all their guys backstage. And I mean, we're going to talk about it in a few moments, but the UpUpDownDown situation with Xavier Woods, I mean, they're not treating their superstars right in any way. And we talked about that last week as well with all the releases. They didn't treat a lot of those releases with the care that they should have, and they didn't treat any of them really right. And now we're seeing that again just a week after. And this is something that we've seen so many times. They're not treating their performers with the respect that they deserve. And it just keeps piling up. And there's going to be so many guys from WWE that are headed over to AEW. We're going to talk about one in a little bit, Kevin Owens. But let's move on to the UpUpDownDown situation that I mentioned before. I think this is just absolutely ridiculous doing my research on it. I don't know how WWE could do something like this, but wow, it honestly, it angers me just thinking about it. But Matt, do you want to break it down for everyone watching what the situation is with Xavier Woods and his channel?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really, really stupid situation on the part of WWE. And it's making a lot of people behind the scenes really uncomfortable. Basically, there's a whole controversy right now going between WWE Digital and Xavier Woods and other people who are appearing on UpUpDownDown. And basically the thing is that they are barely giving Woods any money for UpUpDownDown when it is the one thing online that is giving them the most views. I think the fact that Xavier Woods is obviously King Woods right now, we could talk about the whole Reigns versus Woods feud in the future. My worry is this. It's the fact that we've seen it in the past where WWE will reward guys short term with either a high profile feud or a championship win to keep them in the company. And I feel like WWE is doing that again with Xavier Woods right now, especially knowing how they're treating him in UpUpDownDown, which really was his creation. A lot of the creators on that site or not on that site, but on that channel are very just like not having it with the fact that AEW is or WWE is releasing every single person that's pretty much been on that show. It's making things really uncomfortable for them. I think the fact that WWE time and time again keeps stressing the fact that, you know, wrestlers are independent contractors yet go to own every single part of their personal lives and what they can do out of the ring is really messed up. And I think that the fact that this is happening is just really messed up. It really has just gotten to the point where I know we got off call last week during this podcast, and you know the news broke that Keith Lee came out and said WWE did not pay for any of his medical bills when he was suffering long COVID and nearly died. It just really makes you think, you know, how low is the morale of the locker room right now? Like, how low is it going to get? Because I no longer see WWE as a desirable destination for most people that are currently in the professional wrestling industry.
No, WWE is definitely not a desirable destination for anyone right now. And I think all the free agents on the market know that for themselves. There's a reason why they're all going to AEW. And it's not just because, they want to join the new shiny promotion. No, it's because WWE is a mess right now. And inside of the locker room, it's just, I would pay to be in there for a day to just see the bad energy that's in there, because I could tell there's probably not a lot of people that enjoy being back in that locker room because of the way they treat their superstars. I mean, with the whole UpUpDownDown situation, it's really unfortunate for Woods and really just for everyone as a whole, because the New Day, I feel like we talked about it after last week's show as well. We were talking about guys that could be released. There's basically only like 4 or 5 locks that I wouldn't be surprised. 4 or 5 guys that I consider lifers right now, and that's Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, the New Day, and maybe Sheamus or Randy Orton, but even those 2 are on the fence. But those 4 were the locks that I had in mind. And with this whole thing happening with Xavier Woods, I just don't see them really being locks anymore, because, I mean, no matter how devoted you are to a company or a franchise or something like that in any sport, if they treat you the wrong way like this, you're not going to want to stay very long at all. And I mean, I expect Xavier Woods to run his contract out. I don't know how long it is, but if they keep treating him like this and they don't resolve this issue, I think it's safe to say he might be gone. And that's a huge blow, considering the New Day is a top merchandise seller, and they were basically locks to stay.
I mean, we talked about it last week. I straight up said if New Day leaves, that could be the downfall of WWE. Like, it's very bold to say, especially since they're a massive corporation that probably has like 5-6 times the revenue of AEW in 6 months that AEW has in a year. But like, you really think about it a little bit, and if we're looking at merch sellers and if we're looking at what drives the youth crowd, because really the demographic that should matter that WWE is not realizing right now is the 18 to 49 demographic, because that's where your, you know, long-term viewers are going to be. They seem dead set on appealing to people who are 50 plus with retro acts from the 90s and the 80s, having Goldberg come in over and over, having Brock Lesnar there, who I still love, but Brock Lesnar, like, outside of 1 or 2 feuds during a year, should not be there regularly, taking a spot away from young talent. You just really compare, you know, AEW and WWE right now, where you see who's in the high-profile feuds right now, and it's really all older guys. There's no young talent in there. You can argue that Matt Riddle's only being saddled into that RK Bro thing because they see him as a young talent, but Matt Riddle is like literally 39 years old. So like, he's not that young. I think the lack of emphasis on younger talent and building new stars is going to hurt WWE. I think the whole rebrand of NXT into NXT 2.0 was a mistake. I think that I've been entertained by NXT 2.0, but that regular NXT was the thing that was driving viewers. And the viewership has gone down since they changed it, since Vince McMahon took over. It's just a question of, you know, what do they do to really engage that younger audience? Because once the New Day leaves, if they do leave, which I truly believe that they will, like, you tell me 3 years ago that this is happening, and I would have been like, no way. The New Day is life, like, they're lifers. They love being in that profile. But as AEW grabs more steam and they appear on more shows and they're becoming more mainstream, it's really becoming cause of concern for WWE, because, you know, it's no longer be about jumping ship to WWE. It's going to be about jumping ship to AEW.
Exactly. And I guess this is a perfect segue to our next topic between the Roman Reigns and King Woods feud that's going on right now. And we talked about it a little last week, how there's potential for a feud like this. Um, I watched SmackDown last week and I saw the match. I think it was the perfect way to continue this feud and prolong it. But at the same time, a lot of it worries me with what they're doing right now. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But Matt, what are your thoughts on this feud so far, and how do you think it's going to transition?
Listen, I think the fact that everyone else has the same feeling about this feud, and by the everyone I mean legitimately everyone I've talked to about this feud, not just like in person, but also online, via Twitter, via Reddit, via Instagram, everything. The fact that everyone is concerned about this feud is a big worry. I think the fact that Roman Reigns has not lost a singles match since I believe 2019, and this match he lost in via I believe it was DQ. Um, it's worrying. Like that's the easiest way to put it. It's worrying. Especially since no one, like, as much as everyone loves Xavier Woods, everyone knows that like the end game for Roman Reigns is The Rock. And also he's got this feud with Brock Lesnar still going. This is gonna literally demolish Xavier Woods. Um, my worry is exactly what I said last week would happen, which is Xavier Woods turning on Kingston after getting a bit of an ego around the King gimmick and losing a few times. I feel like that's like setting the stone, setting the way for it right now. I don't like it. I'm legitimately worried about what they're going to do from here because like it also kind of sucks because like, from someone who's watched WWE for well over, I think 10 years at this point, seeing this happen to the company where they're so, lacking, I guess, in the younger talent, where you have an unstoppable champion like Roman Reigns and you're going to feed Xavier Woods to him. The fact that you're so lacking in any other credible names, you have to throw a fan favorite in there who just got his biggest career victory that isn't yet seen as a credible threat. I think it's worrying. I really think it's worrying. And I really hope that like I really hope that like this is not the whole thing, as I said before, of WWE giving him a high profile feud to keep him around because of the whole up, down, down thing. But by each day, it feels more and more like that.
As a whole, before this feud started, this is something that I advocated for and I wanted to see happen a lot. And I think there was a way for WWE to work around it to the point where obviously Xavier Woods is going to lose this feud. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. No matter what happens, he's going to lose the feud, and he should lose the feud. But I think there was a way to build around it to the point where he doesn't look weak. You could have him have honestly, a 2 pay-per-view feud with Roman Reigns. I know that might be a while for someone like Xavier Woods, but you could do something like that, make him look strong throughout that feud. Then he loses, maybe transition him into an upper mid-card role, and then within a year or two, give him a WWE title run. And with the way WWE's booked it, I've liked it from a storyline perspective, but the one thing that really grinds my gears to an extent is that the finish on SmackDown, I didn't want Xavier Woods to be pinned, so I'm glad that didn't happen. But with Roman Reigns taking that crown from him, the thing that worries me about it is that, how are you going to book a logical way for Woods to get that crown back? Because he should have never lost in the first place. He just won that. That's the thing that's going to make him a credible single star. That's the thing that's going to push him to the moon, win an Intercontinental or United States title, and down the line, a world title if he gets that opportunity. That crown, that King of the Ring, was going to be the thing that pushes him towards that. But now he doesn't have that, and I don't know how he's going to get it back against the most dominant star that WWE's booked in a very, very long time. That's the thing that worries me, because there's really no logical way of him getting that back, unless you have Big E beat Roman Reigns at Survivor Series, which that is not smart in its own right. So I don't know what WWE is doing here. I really don't. And as you said, just the way they've been booking it, it just makes me seem more and more like they just want to keep Xavier Woods here in a high-profile feud so he doesn't leave the company. That's exactly what it feels like. And the way they've been booking it has just been baffling.
And I'm going to be fully honest. Like I was the biggest fan of Roman Reigns during the beginning part of this whole head of the table run. But it's kind of stalled. And like it just feels like they don't have any opponents for him. They have Drew McIntyre, but the truth is that like I love Drew, but Drew does not, like, he should not be anywhere towards the main event scene for a bit now. like fans are starting to get sick of him. Xavier Woods, kind of different story in the fact that everyone's clamored for him to get the high profile match, but they know that Roman Reigns will win, so they don't want him to be fed to him. There's no one on that roster that they can feed to Roman Reigns right now. Like, you can't even, at this point, like, I already feel like the next thing they're going to do is either build up Jeff Hardy or just go back to Drew McIntyre. And it sucks because, like, it feels like this whole feud is, or like this whole run is heading to the table has kind of stalled. You know, there's an end game, and that end game is very clearly Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. No one wants to see another Reigns Lesnar fight, even though like it's great. No one wants to see it at WrestleMania anymore. They want new talent, and WWE does not understand that, and they keep putting it on like it's a nostalgia fest, which in a way wrestling as a whole is. But you want to develop that new talent. You don't want to give all the spots to older wrestlers. So,
yeah, I feel like another thing that really just, I mean, his reign is definitely stalling, but I think the reason for that is that they gave Raw like half the talent on that SmackDown roster. And obviously Roman Reigns was the main guy on SmackDown. He's the one that made it stand out from Monday Night Raw. But they had the best roster by far in WWE. By far, SmackDown had the best top to bottom roster in the company. You take Seth Rollins away from that. You've been teasing that feud for months. You take him away and bring him to Raw, and I didn't really hate him going to Raw, but the fact that they teased it so much, and there was a legitimate point where I was thinking maybe Seth Rollins is going to be the one to take him down. That's not happening anytime soon. Finn Balor, I mean, honestly, I like how they moved Finn Balor away, but it's just another guy that they moved away.
I'm going to be fully open on it. The only person outside The Rock that I want to see take him down is Seth Rollins. And like it sucks because Seth Rollins is excelling in this heel role. He shouldn't turn face again for another year. But that just leaves us with the question of The Rock is out doing movies. The Rock also hasn't, like, he's been very open. The Rock isn't the type of guy to keep a secret. He's been very open about the fact that, like, he, number one, has not really been in contact with Vince McMahon about it. And number two, he's not really looking to do it, especially since he's making bank doing movies, making the paycheck he'd get for WWE for one match, like, in, like, one day on a movie set. So it's just really kind of baffling because you really don't know who's going to go against Roman Reigns at this point. Like, this is going to sound really, really hot, but like the only other thing I think they could do is I think they could call Braun Breaker up at the Royal Rumble, have him win it, and have him face Roman Reigns and do that super push. And like any other person, I wouldn't want to do it, but like seeing Braun Breaker and what he brings to the table, I really like him. Do I think that push out of nowhere would be really bad? Yes. But do I think maybe them airing a few vignettes for him before the Royal Rumble could work? Yeah. If you remember, they did that for Batista. Batista won. People booed it, but at the same time, that's because he was a returning superstar, not a new guy. You look at other guys on the roster, Damian Priest, but Damian Priest is a little bit older. Damian Priest is actually older than Roman Reigns, which kind of just tells you again, who do you have that's young talent? They haven't really built anyone up. And it baffles me over and over.
No, yeah, and it's really tough because we're going to move on to the next topic soon, but even with all these guys leaving the company and even more going to be following in their footsteps, it makes it even harder to find guys to take down Roman Reigns and be credible threats. And that's another perfect segue into our last topic of the show, Kevin Owens' heel turn. And I think it's safe to say Kevin Owens will be gone within the next 2 to 3
Kevin
months.
Owens is gone.
He's gone.
Kevin Owens is very clearly gone. I think the fact that, number one, Kevin Owens legitimately looks like he's on his way out of the company. I think there are 3 people that honestly you see leave the company next. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, who, you know, it was said they signed a new contract, but like he cannot be happy there, especially with the WWE's continued, you know, partnership with Saudi Arabia when he has his own Syrian charity and they won't even let him in the country, or like they've outright said that they'll murder him or put him on trial or something. He can't be comfortable there. But also, like, this could sound crazy to me, but I think you see Cesaro leave the company too. I think once again, going back to that whole thing I said about Miro and how Miro looks like a star, and I'd love to see Cesaro in that same role. I think that like Cesaro probably feels the same way. Originally someone I thought would be a WWE lifer, not someone who I see have a credible like championship opportunity at this point in AEW if he were to join, but a guy who you could really have fight a lot of the younger talent. He would probably excel at it. So it's really confounding to me. Kevin Owens' heel turn against Big E, just to give some reminder. He gave him a power bomb on the apron like he likes to do whenever he turns heel. But the truth is that like there's no interest in it anymore because everyone knows that he's on his way out of the company. Everyone knows that he's on his way out. Johnny Gargano's on his way out. Sami Zayn's probably on his way out. These are three people who you could have made the face of your company, WWE. Like these are three people who are considerably younger talent that had all the talent in the world. We're great on the mic. We're great in the ring. You know, you had the opportunity to make them your face of your company and you squandered it in favor of wrestlers like Goldberg, who went over Kevin Owens, Brock Lesnar, etc. It's just baffling. Like this is the last ditch thing for him to do, but I think it's very clear that he's not re-signing with the company. It's very clear he's going to AEW. This is literally just his last run. It reminds me a lot of Dean Ambrose's last run, where Dean Ambrose just did not give a damn about anything. Went to AEW and like tore up the place as Jon Moxley. So yeah.
Yeah, this is we touched on it before with Woods, potentially him being in a feud with Reigns because WWE wants to keep him in a high profile feud so he doesn't leave. That's something that's kind of just a theory at this point. But with Owens going again, getting into a feud with Big E and Seth Rollins right now, that's kind of just the epitome of that. I mean, I think it's the definition of them putting him in a high profile feud so he wants to stay. And that's not going to work at all. That's not going to work. It honestly doesn't even seem like he's passionate doing what he's doing right now. And I mean, I think honestly, considering he's on his way out, I feel like this is the perfect way to do it. Because turning him heel, I think that's going to make him have one last WWE title match. Obviously, he's not going to win if he's on his way out. But he has a match against Big E. And really, the way they've been booking it is everything's going wrong for Owens right now. I feel like it could kind of lead to something like where when Batista quit in 2010, I believe it was, I feel like they could do something where Owens gets screwed over. Next night on Raw, after he loses to Big E at a pay-per-view, he goes, I quit, and then leaves.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the best way to do it.
I mean, but we're on the track of just people leaving WWE, and like, you know, I hate to keep bringing up more speculation, but like you really think about what they did to NXT, and I know I said Johnny Gargano, and you know, wherever he goes, like he will be a star. I'm not sure if that's AEW. Let's, you know, be realistic. AEW cannot take everyone, but like someone who would be a logical hire for them would be Pete Dunne. And I think that, you know, no pun intended, Pete Dunne is done with the company soon. I think the fact that they're emphasizing bigger wrestlers right now, I think the fact they're giving guys like Von Wagner time where it's very clear he doesn't have enough training yet. He's not ready yet to be in the high profile setting.
Almost too.
Wait, what?
Almost as well.
Oh yeah. But I think also the fact that I'm not even going to mention Kyle O'Reilly here because I think it's pretty much a done deal. He leaves. But like, if we're thinking about this entire company and like how it's being run, like it feels like they're going back to their ideas of the 80s where it's all older guys in power. They really only remember the good times of the 80s. They're going for only bigger guys, big, strong guys who, you know, are, you know, hosses and doing big power bombs. But the thing is, there's like no charisma. Like it blows my mind because they keep squandering the young talent that they're given. Like they swooped in to sign all this young talent in 2017, 2016 to make sure AEW would have no one, but AEW still grew. And it's just a testament to the difference as a creative at this point. Like I think you see Ricochet go, which is like kind of a done deal at this point. I think you see Ricochet go. I will hot take here. Ricochet will not be in AEW.
Where?
I think he'll be in New Japan.
Yeah, that was the other
option. I don't think he goes to AEW. I think he goes to New Japan. But I think
Balor's probably gone.
Balor will probably go to New Japan as well. I don't see him in AEW. I don't think that he's an AEW type of guy. I think he's someone who, considering the fact that also he just got married, but at the same time he doesn't have kids, so he doesn't have that to kind of hold him in the US. I think that he's someone who's more comfortable going around the world. It's just really, you wonder, you have all these people who you can make stars out of, and instead it's the same old names. I don't remember the last time a WWE has made like that big of a star since Drew McIntyre. And that kind of was just a product of the circumstances because Roman Reigns had the whole, which I'm not even going to diminish because like obviously like it was a very life-threatening condition and they did everything right for it. But when Roman Reigns had the whole leukemia issue, they had to create a new big face, so they created Drew McIntyre. But like that shows that like you're capable of getting people over with the crowd, and you're not doing it. The whole thing makes no sense to me. I feel like I'm saying this every single week. Like we've done this podcast for what, 3-4 weeks now. Every single week, it's kind of ended with me doing the same rant. And it's just there's young talent, and you don't know how to make that young talent, and you don't know how to develop them, and you don't know how to give them creative plans. Like, why are you relying on this old talent? Like, I get that you're still making money from it, but it's going to run out at some point.
Like, it's really like we've talked about it so much. There's really no other way to put it. They're not treating their guys well in the locker room, so the morale is not up there. They're not booking guys right at all. The guys that should be booked, not necessarily towards the top of the card, but at least booked somewhere in the upper mid card to main card. They're not being booked there. As a whole, they're falling behind with AEW. They're falling behind. And I think AEW is going to steamroll them next year. I think 2022 is going to be the year where we see AEW steamroll, because this year WWE had, obviously Monday Night Raw was borderline unwatchable this year, besides Bobby Lashley. SmackDown was the thing that was holding the company together. And now that they've kind of ruined SmackDown as a whole because they haven't given Roman any credible opponents, I'm sure people are going to become sick of Roman at some point when he goes up against Lesnar again. I mean, SmackDown, I'm not going to say it's going to be bad. It's been pretty solid, but it's not going to be elite how it used to be. So, I don't know. It's just WWE's in a hot mess right now. They're booked into so many corners, and the morale is not great backstage. Do you have anything else to add before we end this show?
I mean, like, it feels like we're like, I'm gonna say the same thing I just said again, but it feels like we're having this conversation weekly. We're having this conversation about how guys are not being treated well in the back. How, obviously we don't know any of the guys one-on-one, so we can't confirm those reports. But knowing the fact that like even former wrestlers have come out and said it, and said that they've been lied to, their promises that have been broken, the fact that like there has been like internal hesitancy to like push any young talent, while AEW is doing everything right now, like it's going to be a problem. And I will always, the quote that might be the beginning of the downfall of WWE was when Vince McMahon, in a meeting with his team, when he learned that AEW was using guys like Jon Moxley and Miro, said, well, they can have more of them, and they cut 30 people in the middle of a pandemic. It's gutless, it's spineless, it's a ruthless business practice. It's disgusting, quite frankly, and just it's pathetic. It's genuinely pathetic. And I think another thing that really it sucks is, like, at least for myself, like kind of out of me doing this podcast, but I'm someone who's always been passionate about the wrestling industry, and I'm someone who was always going to pursue an internship over the summer during my college career with WWE, and because of all this, I decided not to. Because how can I work for a company that does unethical stuff like this, and like literally fires people in the middle of a pandemic, screws them over with regards to their health care, as we saw with Keith Lee, lies about them and does borderline defamation, and is unwilling to push their younger talent and is relying on nostalgia. Like, the fact that AEW is something that I've actually heard like people talk about, and they're not even interested in wrestling. One of my bosses, shout out to Justin, I don't think you're watching this, but shout out to Justin from Wisconsin Athletics, who I told him I was working on a wrestling podcast, and he didn't say WWE, but he talked about AEW. And he's a guy who told me straight up he doesn't watch wrestling. He just knows that AEW is becoming a big thing. So the fact that people outside of the industry who are watching it, or like who aren't watching it, are like becoming more aware of it, is a death knell for WWE, and something needs to change, or they're done.
Yeah, as I said, I think AEW is going to steamroll them next year. WWE is just booked to so many corners, so many bad things going on behind the scenes, some stuff that we probably don't even know about right now. But I think that's the perfect place to wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in to TWSN's official professional wrestling show. I'm Justin Lazarus, so that's Matt Blaustein. You guys should subscribe to the TWSN YouTube channel for more daily shows like this. Every sport you could think of, we have it. Download the mobile app to access all of the articles and content. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at TWSN. And that's been Off the Top Rope. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN.